Dear students, the play that we are now going to start is Electra, written by Sophocles. We have already studied Aeschylus' play Agamemnon. Now this play written by Sophocles is a continuation of the same story. Aeschylus' play Agamemnon ends with the assassination of Agamemnon by his disloyal and adulterous wife Clytemnestra, who murders him to seek revenge of Agamemnon's slaughtering Iphigenia at the start of the Trojan War in order to placate gods and gain favorable winds for his soldiers. Now let us look at the background information of the play. The play is said to be written around 410 BCE. We are not sure about the exact time the play was written. And as I said earlier, this play again explores one part of the same myth of House of Atreus, on which the earlier play we discussed in great detail, that is Agamemnon by Aeschylus. So this play is set some 20 years after Agamemnon's assassination in Mycenae. One thing that I want to add into this introduction is three great Greek tragedians have been fascinated by the story of Electra and dramatized it in their own ways in their plays. So we have a play written on the same storyline by Aeschylus that is entitled as The Libation Bearers. And then we have Euripides, who again dramatized the same story and gave it the same name as Sophocles has used for his play. But due to their individual artistic treatment of the story, in these three versions of the same story we find significant plot differences. And then, more importantly, their representation of female characters, especially Electra, also differs from each other. So there are certain points of similarity and difference that I'll be discussing as we move through the play and discuss it thoroughly. So let's move on. Here I just want to add one more point to remind you of two important ideas that you're already familiar with. First, to understand what Greek tragedy is, because as we move forward, I'll highlight how Sophocles' play Electra is actually a character drama, considered to be one of his best character drama. So in order to understand that, I thought to include this point and remind you of the very basic definition of Greek tragedy itself. So Greek tragedy is a verse drama in which a noble protagonist falls to ruin during a struggle caused by a flaw for which the great Greek philosopher Aristotle used the word hamartia, that is roughly translated as flaw, in his or her character, such as pride in Greek, hubris, or an error in his or her rulings or judgments. Now, this is not the place to discuss in great detail many magisterial ideas, many important ideas which are discussed by Aristotle in his treatise Poetics. So basically, this definition is again based on Aristotle's explanation. So for Aristotle, the essential plot of tragedy is all about the downfall of a noble and socially prominent protagonist. And this downfall, according to his interpretation, is caused by a flaw in his or her character. Now, once again, let me remind you that this is a very basic and rough definition of tragedy, because there is a lot of discussion among critics on what hamartia actually means in Aristotle. So this is what we need to bear in mind while studying Greek tragedy. The second point that I want to discuss with you is the relationship between myth and plot. See, Greek stories, whether they be plays or poems like epics, are grounded in certain myths. In simple words, myth is a story in circulation among the Greek society, and this story actually represents many things at the same time. It refers to, it incorporates, it signifies some of their religious beliefs. And you will find, as you study Greek tragedy, that religion played an integral part of the story. There is a strong relationship between religion and state in Greek tragedy. So these stories represent their religious beliefs, their worldly wisdom, and their outlook on life, what they perceived, what they thought about life. So these myths are actually very important to understand Greek society itself. So the play that we are looking at is again based in the myth of House of Atreus that we introduced in our earlier discussions, and hopefully you are quite familiar with the details of this myth of House of Atreus. So now let's look at the significance of the title of the play. Electra in Greek means bedless, unwed, unmarriageable. Now, all these meanings certainly refer to the character of Electra in the play, but at the same time, the very name itself signifies an important feature of Greek society which Sophocles has explored in great detail through this play, and that is the status of women in Greek society. So we'll talk about how Greek society was a discriminatory society. They had this discriminatory approach towards women. But I'll not go into details of this theme, as I believe once we read the play, I'll be explaining it through different instances from the text itself. So this Electra is named after a major character in the play, that is Agamemnon's daughter, Orestes' sister, Electra. And this is to be noticed that Electra as a character possesses longest speaking part in Greek tragedy, like no other character. So in this play, Sophocles explores in great detail the moral motives of Electra to seek revenge against his father's assassination, and the way she is fixated and obsessed with the ideas of justice, family honor, and revenge. So considering these points, we find the title quite justifiable, since the play is, and we'll be talking about many other aspects, but for the time being, although there are some more details I want to add to this point, but as Electra dominates the stage in this play and speaks more than any other character in Greek tragedy, in fact, and the way Sophocles focuses on exploring her motives, he was quite justified to name this after this major character. Now let's have a look at Dramatis personae, that is, characters in the play. You are already familiar with many of these characters while studying Agamemnon by Aeschylus. So the new characters, some of them are Orestes, son of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra. Similarly, Electra, sister of Orestes, and then another sister of Orestes and daughter of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, Chrysothemis, an old man who is a tutor or an old servant of the house, and he has a significant role to play in this drama. Clytemnestra, Aegisthus, Pylades, son of Strophius, who is king of Phocis, another place, another city, and a friend of Orestes. So Orestes was actually raised and brought up by king of Phocis, and this is where he befriended Strophius. And then we have chorus, which consists of women of Mycenae. This is the name of the place. Mute characters, we have handmaid, that is female servant of Clytemnestra, two attendants of Orestes. All right. So if you look at the play, as I have already talked about the structure of Greek drama in your midterm syllabus, the star of the play, that is called Prologue, is about Orestes' return to Argos after he is a young man, after he has spent some 20 years with Strophius, king of Phocis, and now he is a young man coming back to Argos accompanied by Pylades and the old man. First of all, let me here talk about the old man. Old man was actually a loyal, faithful, trustworthy servant of Agamemnon, whom Electra handed over the infant Orestes after she witnessed the way Agamemnon was brutally murdered by Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, and the way they usurped his throne. She feared Orestes' life, and in order to rescue him, she secretly entrusted him to this old man and asked him to take him to a distant place where he could remain safe from Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, who could possibly kill him, finding him a potential enemy who would be seeking his father's revenge when he is young. And this is what exactly happens. And this is the reference that is explained about what happens right after Agamemnon's death in this play. And remember one thing, all the line numbers I have included in my points are actually lines of the translation of Sophocles' play by Anne Carson that we are using. So what happens in this episode is the old man who has brought Orestes back to Argos encourages him to avenge his father's murder. When the play starts, this scene is portrayed taking place outside the palace of Clytemnestra. And these three characters who are gathered outside overhear Electra speaking. They are actually talking to each other, and then they hear the voices coming from the inside of the palace. So first, Orestes is encouraged by old man to seek revenge, which was considered noble in Greek society. And then we find Orestes approaching the Delphic oracle of Apollo for further clarity for his revelation. So this is all for introduction. We'll continue with the discussion in our next session. Thank you very much.